Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 creative coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's both my pleasure and my mission to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaways. Also, that way your creative journey can be at least a little bit easier, right? That's the intent. Now, before I fully dive into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, that way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, let's get into last week, right? Last week was kind of one of those things where, you're really being tested, right? There's a wonderful book called The Alchemist that a lot of people love, and it's been recommended to me for a number of years, and for whatever reason I just never got around to it. And finally, it's a book that I read pretty recently. And the reason that I'm bringing it up is because in it, there's this boy who is in search of his personal legend, right? There's this notion that each of us has a personal legend, almost, you can consider it a purpose, right, in life. And so him going on this journey is fulfilling that purpose. And one of the things he learns in the journey is that, beginner's luck is a real thing, at least as presented in the book. And so at the beginning of his journey, everything is moving towards him. Everything is helping him towards his personal journey. But the closer he gets to his personal journey, like the end goal, the harder it becomes, because it's like the universe testing him to make sure that he learned all the lessons that he was supposed to in order to obtain his treasure, i.e. personal legend, fulfill his purpose. And that's something that I think about, especially as it pertains to last week, because, I don't know if it's my purpose to be a filmmaker, but I certainly enjoy it and so forth. And, when you start off, there's a lot of good tailwind or whatever you call it, pushing you forward. There's a lot of good momentum. And then as things go by, there's definitely resistance, to say the least, right? And so last week, where this is all headed in terms of the tangible, flights were being pushed around, the times changed, which, for a few of them weren't that bad. It actually benefited us, but on one of them it was like, ooh, this kind of sucks. This really throws a monkey wrench into the whole endeavor. And then there's a location that we'd been wanting to really film at that was just beautiful, and unfortunately that fell through. And so it was kind of like, and it wasn't all bad, right? It's like, if you've ever seen Happy Gilmore, there's a montage where him and this young caddy, when he does good, they're like high-fiving, cheering, all that type of stuff. And then he messes up and he's ready to punch the caddy, right? And it kind of cuts back and forth, right? It's this almost like a roller coaster of emotion. And in some ways, that was last week, There was some really, really good stuff that happened. And I won't say the stuff that was bad was in any way detrimental, or insurmountable, but it was a knee to the balls type of thing, right? So you kind of have to readjust. And so in that sense, a big focus of last week was adjusting the schedule, speaking with the team in Colombia. Luckily, they had a lot of good news, and so even though, things fell through on a couple of things that we wanted, we're getting creative with where we're headed, right? And so just kind of utilizing that to our advantage, and just not being resistant to the things that come up, because there's a lot of unknowns, right? Certainly the pandemic has taught us that, and filmmaking's in general are, a tough endeavor. Doing it during the pandemic in a different country is a whole nother thing. And so, it's, we're kind of readjusting and things like that. And instead of fighting against it, it's like, how do we use this creatively? From a story perspective, from a visual perspective, from a production standpoint, it's like, okay, this fell through, but how do we readjust so we make our lives simpler? All these things working in tandem, forcing us to come up with new solutions as opposed to just, really crushing us. And so that was a big crux of last week, like I said, a couple locations fell through, but we're working with them, and it's great, for me. Whenever we do a production call, I like to have an agenda, and I try to involve only the people that are truly needed. But at the same time, even like from a story perspective, like there's people from the story that script-wise may not be 100% fully needed in terms of those certain production calls, and yet I know they bring a lot to the table. And hearing it, even towards the end, I kind of paused and said, hey, from a story perspective, since this is happening, we should probably think of backups. And right off the bat, John Comerford is his name. He was already ahead of you. Here's how we can solve for that, and it works. It doesn't, it doesn't matter, and it actually can be a really sweet moment. It's like, oh, you're right. That's perfect. Boom, boom, boom. So all this stuff coming in just enhances things, right? When you are pushed into a corner, I guess it's kind of like when they talk about happy accidents. You didn't plan for something, but then something just magically happened. And in this sense, yes, there's still a conscious effort to make those things happen. So it's not like purely happenstance, but all the same, it's that spirit of it, right? Where you're embracing it versus fighting against it. And in a lot of ways, myself as someone that helps other people, and people call me for advice and things like that, one of the main things that I deal with is that sort of resistance of, where people want like all aspects to be perfect. And it's like, okay, if you don't have the time or the resources, rather than fight against that, utilize it as the resource. And what can you do differently and lean into that as if it is part of it, so that way you make yourself stand out and it becomes the choice versus, a thing that you just didn't have time or resources for, right? That becomes the element of it. It's no different than, sometimes because it becomes an art is subjective ultimately, and so if you can make it look like a choice, then it becomes pretty cool, right? I mean, there's movies I can think of, Jackie, the Natalie Portman led movie about, the JFK assassination, that was shot on 16mm film. Even though not very successful in any regard, Darren Aronofsky's Mother, that was shot on 16mm. Blue Bayou, was shot, the recent movie that just came out, it was shot on 16mm film. And it's like, they could afford to go 35mm if they wanted to. They could have definitely done digital, but they chose specifically to go 16mm, right? Because it was an artistic choice, and they had, they didn't have all the resources in the world, but they had the resources to make a different choice in that regard. And so for you, treat it, even though you might not necessarily have the choice, make it seem like a choice. And that's what I embrace with my art versus go against it, in a lot of ways, right? And, the other thing of it being that when you plan things out in a certain way and so forth, I think too many people overestimate how long it takes to do something, right? And yeah, when you're putting up 100 lights and yada, 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 that can take quite a while and things like that. And, that's one of the reasons I hate Hollywood productions is they're just so slow mechanically. I hate it. It's so boring to me. That's why for me, I do lean into the freneticism of the story and the production side of things, and some people look at that as like, holy moly, how are you going to accomplish all of this in the timeline that you're presenting? And it's like, well, lest we forget a wonderful principle called Parkinson's Law. And what Parkinson's Law is all about is the time to completion really is dictated how much time you give it. So, if I give you an assignment and say, hey, can you get it to me in 2 weeks? Realistically, it's going to take you 2 weeks. If I say, hey, I need it in 4 hours, you'll find a way to do it in 4 hours, right? Because we focus, it's an interesting phenomenon. It's not like this woo-woo type stuff. It really is. Your concentration begins to hone in and so forth in a different way when you're presented with different timelines, right? And it's interesting. Now, the automatic question might arise of, well then, if given a shorter timeline, does everything feel rushed? And, for me, that's where the idea of that I've always kind of looked towards of no hurry, no pause comes in. When you don't rush, time seems to expand. When you rush and are tense, time seems to compress. So that is how you can really, create that focus when you're just being in the present and forget all the chitter chatter of the brain, of the worries, and instead just focus on the task at hand. And those things combined will yield you the result that you're looking for, right? And that's historically how things have worked for me, and why I know it's doable, And I always go to, it's like that age-old thing of, no one believed the 4-minute mile was possible, then one person does it, all of a sudden it's become possible. And in a way, it's similar to this idea that, a lot of people discredit like Robert Rodriguez for making a $7,000 movie because they're like, that's 1 in a million, not everyone is as successful as him after that and so forth. And I get that, but there are still, it is replicatable, right? It can be reproduced. Chris Nolan is another example, and stuff like that. So other people have made movies on a small budget and then have gone on to do incredible things. And so there's a template there to be able to borrow from if you so choose, right? It's hard, but it's not impossible, right? And that's the key there. None of this is supposed to be easy, but it's there for the taking if you execute on it, right? And make the adjustments that you need to make, as opposed to being defeated at every obstacle, because as with anything in life, there will be obstacles. So, all that to say, we had a wonderful production meeting and a lot of great updates. Some of the stuff that fell through, we're gonna get even more beautiful locations than we thought, and we're gonna make it work. And there was a location that was like an hour and a half away. Now we only have to drive 45 minutes away, and the other location that was tied to it is going to be 10 minutes from there. So things are actually working in our favor in that way. Again, we're just kind of going with it, right? So it's forcing scheduling changes, it's forcing a couple of other things, but all in the end for the positive. And as that's happening, it is also making me reevaluate the script on a good way, in a good way, I should say, because I'm like, okay, it's been a while since I really, I have the script and I know the script like the back of my hand, but we haven't really made creative changes to it in a while. Just minor things here and there maybe, but as I'm thinking, okay, how do we improve the ending? How do we, how do we X, Y, and Z something, right? So, the other aspect of it is, as we fill out some of the secondary roles, it's dictating some things creatively as well, and being able to look at that and see, okay, how do we adjust it? This person had a lot of speaking lines in English, but what if we flipped it to be more Spanish oriented, and how would that look? And it works, right? That's the beautiful part about it. We kind of look at it and we're like, yeah, that actually would play better and would be, because it would be more natural And even though, like, obviously, like, our main character doesn't speak Spanish, you know, there's other people that to be able to translate for him. And so, yeah, it's just working a lot better, right? And leaning into that. So I'm gonna really spend this coming week to figure out how to enhance certain things, right? And, you know, who knows how many changes end up coming from it, but I think they could be good, right? So I'm going to do that. The other exciting part is this coming, this next week is a lot of prep work because we film the first part of the movie. We're going to film against the green screen, so we've decided to do that in LA. We've decided to give ourselves, a lot of time. We didn't want to like lump it a few days before going to Colombia to film principal photography. And so that's exciting, you know, and Jonathan Moulton, who's gonna film with me for the movie, he's flying out to LA, so we're also gonna do like camera Olympics, right? So we're gonna do like, you know, who can rack focus faster and also more accurately. You know, we're gonna do camera movements and, who has less shake and things like that, all in good fun. Just to see where both of our strengths lie, so that way we can lean into that as opposed to exposing our weaknesses, right? That's the goal. And so, and also just get better, right? So push each other to get better. And so that's going to be the exciting aspect of all of it. So, and I haven't seen him in a while. I've seen him over Zoom, right? But I haven't seen him in person in quite a long time. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So that's exciting. And, you know, the other thing we've been talking about from a visual standpoint is, polarizers and ND filters and, you know, various things to make the image just look that much sharper and so forth. So yeah, a lot of exciting things happening. We're going to be finalizing wardrobe. The other aspect we're going to be finalizing, this week / probably next week is, hair and makeup and how that's going to look. You know, we're putting it all together so that way we'll call it a little Bible, like a booklet of all the looks. So that way, we can reference that on set, for continuity purposes. We can always go to that page. I put in all the scene numbers for, right now just the costuming because we have that. And so that way we know, okay, cool, scene, 37, boom, here's the look. And then when we have the makeup and the hair, we can know that aspect of it as well. So very exciting. So that's kind of, what's really been happening, for the majority of last week in terms of the creative side of things. I've done other stuff as well. Like I'm kind of low key, just been doing some writing for my second novel. That's been going well as it can. I've tried to devote time to it without taking away time from everything else. So I've been kind of averaging about 700 pages a day. Took a couple days off, took the weekend off because of movie-related stuff. And as I get closer to production, I'm sure I'll put that on pause. But it's just been fun to get back into writing in general. I think, however small increments I can make, it's better than nothing, right? So, and in a way, for me, it is nice because it's good to take my mind off of this film. I don't want to just like fully have this thing in my mind, 100% of the time, because you need something else to focus on, because that will also spark ideas, right? That's why I love reading all kinds of fiction. That's why I like seeing different kinds of movies and yada, 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 right? So that's been fun. Also, I did forget to mention, and I should mention, we had rehearsals this past Thursday, and those went well, right? I think I've talked about this in a couple episodes ago, where I'm really embracing the progression of everything. We're really exploring and finding the scenes collectively, right? And testing stuff out. And I think we're at the part where we're really, starting to understand the crux of it. And now, collectively, the actors are starting to make really interesting choices, right? No longer is it like, okay, let me just try to get what's on the page and what's, in my mind. But for them now, they have that grasp, that core idea, and they can, add to it, right? So that's the exciting part. In addition to filming this coming week, we do have another rehearsal for different scenes that we didn't rehearse on Tuesday, so that's going to be exciting. So lots of stuff going on. The other exciting part was this past week, I was able to see my friend's feature film. He put together, we'll call it a rough cut, a first cut, whatever, but ultimately it's a full cut of the film, and he wanted me to watch it and give him notes. It was exciting because I was not expecting, first off, a full edit. I thought, based on our conversations from just days before he showed up, it was looking like, okay, he would have 45 minutes, 50 minutes, maybe an hour. But he had the full an hour and 40-ish completed, which was exciting, and allowed us to watch the entire thing from start to finish. And it was really exciting to see, and one of the things I always like to ask, what are you looking for me from this session? How can I be of most benefit to you? And, I think more people should do that because it'll dictate, the session. And I think it'll make both parties happy. And so he let me know what he was looking for, and we watched it and things like that. And of course, without divulging any information, there's things to touch up, but as a foundation, there's a lot of exciting stuff there, and I was really proud of him, and quite frankly, it was exciting to I've seen the early drafts of the script, but I had not seen the filming draft, right? And to see the changes that he'd made from a story perspective, I was really proud of him. I'm like, this really enhanced the script from when I last saw it, and you made a lot of exciting choices. So, really, really something to be excited for, and I was excited for him, and we'll continue helping each other out. It's fun to talk to him about his experience, and I get to learn going into my movie, and pre him filming, I was basically feeding him based off of my first feature film of the things I learned, so that way he could benefit when he filmed his. And so it's just nice all around to have that support system, almost like a George Lucas, Steven Spielberg type, back when they were kind of on the come up. So yeah, that's kind of what we look at each other as, right? And it's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's really the long and short of things as I continue going towards making this film a reality. We're a month and change from going, and I mean, like I said, we start filming this coming week, so very exciting stuff. I'll be able to report on that next week. And just as a kind of a heads up, the closer we get to filming, especially once I'm filming, my lessons and things like that will go on hiatus. I'll kind of go on social media blackout because just by the nature of it, I'll be focused on that. But, I will continue filming as much as I can leading up to it, and sharing stories such as this and so forth. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you. As always, you can ask any questions you have or thoughts. They can be about the stuff that I talked about. They can be stuff I didn't talk about. Hit me up in the comment section or on social media at Svitek. Would love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you next time.